So we're going to jump back into the evidence of Stephen Bradshaw to the Post Office Horizon IT inquiry, and again the aggressive interview style comes across. The appellant judge, who heard an appeal of a sub-postmistress, called her judgment an affront to justice. But at the time when he was being interviewed, Stephen Bradshaw felt it was appropriate to tell her to get up earlier. She should be in the post office earlier so that she's watching every single thing that's happening to work out where the alleged £59,000 shortfall was going, because she couldn't identify it, although she suspected her staff. What does he have to say about that? Does it chime with him being professional? Let's jump into the inquiry.
I'd like to move on to the case of Janet Skinner, please, and that's Pol 00113278. Miss Skinner was another appellant in the Josephine Hamilton Court of Appeal case. She had her conviction quashed. Could we look at page 45, please, which details what the Court of Appeal said about Miss Skinner. They say on the 5th of January 2007, Janet Skinner pleaded guilty to one count of false accounting. We understand that the alleged shortfall was £59,000. On the 2nd of February, she was sentenced to 9 months imprisonment. Paragraph 191 says, during a post office audit, Mrs. Skinner had volunteered that there would be a £40,000 shortage of cash. In her interview under caution, she stated that the losses had begun in January 2006. She believed that she did not declare them as she couldn't afford to put it right. She believed that one of her members of staff had stolen the money, a belief in part predicated on the belief that such a large amount of money just couldn't go missing.
An understandable suspicion, because really such large amounts of money shouldn't go missing, but sadly, we know now from what we know about Horizon that was exactly what Horizon was capable of.
Prosecution relied on the evidence of 3 of the 4 other members of staff, but we're not persuaded that their evidence was capable of materially advancing the prosecution case. Between the 1st of January 2004 and the 31st of January 2005, Mrs. Skinner made 116 calls to the National Business Support Centre. Some of those calls concerned Horizon faults and balancing. At the next paragraph, about halfway through that paragraph, it says, it appears that there was no evidence to corroborate the Horizon evidence. There was no proof of an actual loss as opposed to a Horizon-generated shortage. There was no investigation into the various helpline calls made by Mrs. Skinner. We're struck by the fact that the Post Office failed to take these steps despite Mrs. Skinner's long service to the Post Office and her professional progress, doubtless reflecting her trustworthiness from counter-clerk to permanent sub-postmistress of the North Bransham Post Office.
And it's that kind of thing which you do need to consider. Does it mean that there's absolutely no way it could have happened under any circumstances? No. But is it an indication that someone's trustworthy and honest? Yes, they've worked with you for a long time. The least they deserve is a proper investigation and consideration of all the points in the case. That's the least you could expect from an employee that you've given a lot of service to.
It says the Post Office conceded that it was unfair, but we are bound to conclude that her prosecution was an affront to justice.
And they keep using this form of words, affront to justice. It's hard to think of a judge, an appellant judge, putting things in any more stringent terms. Not just unfair, but an affront to justice.
I'd like to look at some the transcript of interview in her case, and that's at Pol 00112971, please. Thank you. Can we turn to page 3? You were the interviewing officer in Miss Skinner's case alongside a colleague, Diane Matthews. Is that correct?
That's correct, yes. It was Miss Matthews was the lead investigator.
Thank you. Can we start by looking at page 6? I'm going to take you through a few parts of this transcript. About halfway down that page and to the bottom, there is her explanation. So she says it's just been going up and up for the past 5 months. She's asked by your colleague, do you want to give us an account of why there is over 59,000 short in your account? And she says, if I had the answer, I'd give you it. But I haven't. It started off 7,500 and it's basically gone up. And to be honest, I just thought that whoever was taking it would be putting it back. I mean, I can prove to you. I'm here because I want to prove that I'm innocent. If you want to search my house, you can. If you want to search my banks, you can. I've got nothing to hide whatsoever. I'm not a thief. There's another interview if we go over to page 18, please? Sorry, actually, could we go to page 10? About halfway down page 10, there's a question from you. You say, do you know it was a criminal offence to falsify your accounts? And she says, yes, like I've said, it sounds really daft, really. It's a large amount of money, and I hope it gets found. I can be investigated in any way, and I have nothing to hide. There's a second interview, and we can see that at page 18. Again, it's conducted by Miss Matthews and yourself. Can we look at page 25, please? It's about halfway down and to the bottom of page 25. This is a conversation about a member of staff who was paying money back to Miss Skinner from a discrepancy that she had identified. And you say as follows, sorry, who is the sub-postmistress? Who's responsible for making losses? I'll start slightly above, actually. You say, by your own admission, you've not made your shortages good. £1,400 has been outstanding since November 2004. And she...
Well, that's as much the post office's fault as it is potentially hers, because surely they should be following up on that if they think they're owed it.
Says, but it wasn't my outstanding shortage. And you say, sorry, who is the sub-postmistress? Who's responsible for making losses good? And she says, that is the only thing that I'm bothered about. You can investigate me as much as you want. I don't care. I've got nothing to hide. You can search my house. You can rip it apart. You can do the same with my bank account for the past 5 years. I've got nothing to hide whatsoever. The only thing that bothers me is the fact that somebody's going to be held responsible for that, and that somebody is me. And she's asked, and why is it going to be you? And she says, because it should have been my responsibility, and it should have been something I dealt with in the beginning, and I know that, and that goes through my head every day. And if I could answer for that sort of money, I would answer. I know that I can prove I haven't stolen any money. I ain't a thief. And then you ask, how do we know you haven't stolen that money? And she says, I know I haven't. I can sleep at night knowing I haven't. And you say, we've got £59,000 shortage in your accounts. You've offered no explanation as to where that money's gone. You've got a £1,400 loss. Everything is hunky-dory for 12 months. And she says, no, it isn't hunky-dory. I could force the woman to pay the money that she didn't have. I couldn't force the woman to pay the money that she didn't have, because that's all it is. I couldn't force her. She didn't have the money. All she kept saying was she didn't have the money. And then you say, but you rewarded her by giving her the keys. Come into the office. She said, yeah, I know, only because the customers were complaining that I was arriving at work late. And you say, get up earlier. Your responsibility. You took the role of being sub-postmaster. Diane will go through the rest. We're up to £9,000 and we have another £50,000 to find. And she says, the rest just went missing through the year. I can't explain it any other way. You can break it down into pounds or pennies or whatever you want, but I can't explain it. If I had an answer, I wouldn't be sat here. Get up earlier. Did you consider it to be part of your job to offer lifestyle advice to sub-postmasters?
Maybe not, but at the post, they were contracted to open up the post office at a certain time.
I mean,
and, if you can't get up, fine. I can't help my terminology. We all come from different parts of the country, and we all have different ways of expressing it. I apologise if they don't like that sort of terminology. It wasn't meant as any to be detrimental towards it. It's just so think if you're forever arriving late for work, people say to you about getting up early to arrive on time.
Yeah, but she's running the business. A member of her staff is opening the post office. That shouldn't be an issue. I kind of get, I think, where he's trying to come from here in saying, well, if you didn't trust this member of staff and thought they stole the money, then why did you give them keys to the office? But they said they didn't steal the money. So, without any proof, she probably felt like she couldn't accuse a member of staff. And really, that should have been the post office's starting point in relation to the sub-postmasters as well.
My question was, do you think it was appropriate to give lifestyle advice? Because your evidence yourself has been that you were carrying out an interview under the Police and Criminal Evidence Act, a very serious interview. Do you think that it's appropriate for somebody who is questioning somebody in relation to a criminal offence, tells them that they need to get up earlier?
As I said, if it's my terminology and it's not liked, I apologise for that. It wasn't the lifestyle is she's there for 9 o'clock. She identified the person that she's suspected of stealing the money. So to save her coming in, she give that person the keys. That's all that conversation is. It has to be taken in the context as I go. When you read something, it can sound better or worse than when it's actually spoken at the time.
Mr. Bradshaw, you still work for the Post Office.
I do.
In the security department.
I do.
Do you consider still that it is appropriate to say somebody in an interview that is very similar to a police interview that they should get up earlier?
Some people may say yes, some people may say no. Fine, I'll concede and say no, it's not appropriate.
Some people may say yes, some people may say no. What do you say? Is it appropriate? Is it not appropriate?
As I say, it needs to begin in the context of how the conversation goes.
I mean, appropriateness to one side is, again, quite an aggressive interview style, isn't it, if you're just trying to get to the truth?
That to me, at the time, appeared to be okay. If you can't get up and you're always late, you could lose the post office just by opening too late.
If you were still carrying out this role, if you were still interviewing people, if you were interviewing somebody tomorrow, would you have any concerns about using that language in an interview?
I may phrase it a different way.
But you may still give similar advice.
It's a very difficult question, isn't it? To advice. It's not really advice. You know, in advice-wise, is, you know, if you, as I say, if you're always late, most people from being a small child in your school saying, you know, you'd need to get up earlier to get in on time.
Is it appropriate?
I don't see a great deal wrong with it if you can't get in on time.
What's its purpose, though? What purpose does it serve in an interview of this kind?
Well, the purpose was there is that she was always, what she said in she gave the keys to somebody else to open, and that's fine. She can do that, but the keys were given to somebody she's suspected of stealing money, which is a bit strange, to me, is a bit strange.
Which, to be fair, is a fair point, although it is worth saying that the employee did deny stealing that money. It doesn't sound like she actually had any evidence of it, but I guess the wider point here, because we seem to be kind of getting lost in the weeds, somewhat of a side issue here, the money wasn't actually stolen, as the appellant judge in their judgment stated. It was an affront to justice, so it's kind of a moot point, really, I would suggest.
What does it matter to you whether she opens, somebody else opens? You're carrying out a criminal investigation here. You're not actually assisting her with the smooth running of her post office, are you?
Well, the smooth running would be that if she would be there to see what was happening from the post office from start to finish.
Is it still your evidence that you were professional during the interview?
Yes, I do.